Have you ever been on like a really packed subway car during rush hour?
Oh, yeah. Countless times. It's quite the experience.
Right, like you are shoulder to shoulder with maybe 100 other people. You're breathing the exact same air. You're swaying to the exact same motion of the train. You're sharing the exact same zip code, basically.
Yeah.
But if you look around, everyone has their AirPods in. They're staring at their phones, avoiding eye contact at all costs.
All costs, yeah.
You are surrounded by humanity, yet you have never felt more isolated.
It is the ultimate modern paradox.
Yeah.
Because biologically and physically you are a group, but psychologically you're completely fragmented.
Exactly. And usually when we talk about human potential, we actually reinforce that fragmentation. Like we treat potential like an athlete's stats,
Oh, I see what you mean, like their individual metrics.
Right. We track their personal best, their diet, their vertical leap, and we just point to them and say, there it is. That's their potential. It stops at the edge of their own skin.
Well, it's a very comforting way to look at the world, right?
Right.
We like to think of our capabilities as entirely our own, neatly boxed up. It makes us feel independent.
But then you step into the world of PROUT, which stands for Progressive Utilization Theory, and suddenly that solitary spotlight is just completely shattered.
It really is.
Yeah. Today's deep dive is based on a stack of really fascinating sources that argue you cannot look at the individual without looking at the whole. According to this framework, the people on that subway car, they are not a society.
No.
They're just a biological coincidence.
That is a harsh but very accurate way to frame it. Prout views human potential as this deeply interconnected web. You just can't optimize one single node, one person, without considering the entire living structure.
And that is our mission today. We are going to explore how personal growth is inextricably linked to social evolution. We're going to unpack the actual mechanics of what our sources call collective psychology. And we're going to try to understand how human history itself is driven by an expanding collective consciousness.
Which is an incredibly optimistic, progressive framework, honestly. And it all hinges on one very specific, very profound principle.
Yes. So today's sources focus heavily on Prout's third fundamental principle. In the original Sanskrit, it's Sutra 5.14, which goes, Vyashti Samashti Shrira Manasatyatmika Samhavanayo Karmopayogashte.
Beautifully said.
Oh, thanks. I practiced. But when you translate that ancient imperative into modern terms, it is this massive call to action.
Yeah.
It states that there must be maximum utilization of the physical, metaphysical, and spiritual potentialities of both the individual, the unit, and the collective bodies of human society.
Let's just pause on the way to that for a second. Maximum utilization.
Yeah.
This isn't just a suggestion. It's a blueprint for total human flourishing that refuses to leave anything on the table.
Right.
It's saying we have to elevate our bodies, our intellects, and our spirits, and we have to do it simultaneously on the micro level of the individual and the macro level of society.
Okay, let's unpack how that actually works, because the sources break this down into three distinct dimensions of the individual, which they call Vyashti.
Right, Vyashti.
Let's start with the physical and the metaphysical potential. Now, when I hear physical potential, my mind immediately goes back to that athlete in the gym.
Which makes total sense. But the text is looking at physical potential through a much wider socioeconomic lens. It's not just about how much you can bench press.
Okay.
It's about manpower, health, and stamina on a societal level.
Yeah.
Because you can't maximize a population's physical potential if they are starving.
Wow, yeah.
So it starts with guaranteeing the minimum requirements of life for everyone.
Right, because if all your energy is spent just trying to survive the day, your surplus physical potential is basically zero.
Exactly. But here is where Prout gets highly specific about the mechanism. It connects physical utilization to the right to work.
Okay.
But it demands that work must align with a person's intrinsic psychological traits. The sources categorize historical human aptitudes into 4 distinct psychological types.
Let's walk through those, because I found this absolutely fascinating. They use these traditional terms, but they apply them to human psychology, right?
Right. So first you have the Shudra psychology, which is the kinetic physical worker.
Okay.
These are people who thrive on tangible, manual, or labor-driven tasks. Then you have the Kshatriya, the martial or protective type people driven by courage, who naturally just want to guard and defend.
Right, like protectors.
Exactly. Next is the Vibra, which is the intellectual or analytical mind. And finally, the Vaishya, the entrepreneurial type, who really excels at resource allocation and economic management.
Okay, so to translate that to the modern world, right? If you take someone with a deeply protective, courageous psychology, a Kshatriya archetype, and you force them to sit in a cubicle doing repetitive data entry for 40 years,
Oh, man.
you aren't just making them miserable. According to this theory, you are actively wasting human potential. You're fundamentally misallocating a societal resource.
Precisely. You're forcing a square peg into a round hole, which causes friction for the individual and inefficiency for the society.
Yeah.
Maximizing physical potential really means aligning what a person does with how their brain is actually wired. And that naturally bleeds into the second dimension, the metaphysical.
The metaphysical or psychic potential. So this is all about the intellect, right? The subtle expressions of the mind.
Yes. It encompasses intellectual capacity, scientific discovery, social and economic philosophy, and the institutions we build to foster them. Educational systems, research centers, mass media, these are all engines of our metaphysical potential.
But then the text moves to the third dimension, which is where I think a lot of modern secular frameworks tend to hit a wall. It moves to spiritual potential.
Yeah, that's a big shift for some people.
And I want to spend some time here because spiritual is a word that gets thrown around a lot.
Oh, constantly.
It often sounds so vague, like just be a good person or go meditate on a rock, But this source text is highly mechanical about how spirituality actually functions.
It really is.
Yeah.
It doesn't treat spirituality as a vague feeling. It treats it as a tangible capability.
I was trying to visualize this while reading, and I came up with an analogy. Tell me if this works.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think of a forest. The physical potential is the mushroom you see above the ground, the tangible biological structure. The metaphysical potential is the cellular biology happening inside that mushroom, the complex internal processing.
Okay, I'm with you.
But the spiritual potential, that is the vast underground mycelial network that connects that single mushroom to the roots of every other tree in the forest. It's the invisible web that transmits nutrients and information to the whole.
Oh, I really like that mycelial analogy, because without that underground network, the individual mushroom is profoundly limited.
It's totally isolated.
Exactly. The text defines spiritual utilization as the moment when the individual mind seeks what it calls the universal supreme rhythm.
Universal supreme rhythm. That sounds amazing, but what does that actually feel like in practice?
In practical terms, it's a profound state of flow. When a person's mind gets captivated by this rhythm, it creates a state of mysticism. You feel an overwhelming sense of unity with everything around you. But here's the critical mechanism. This isn't just an internal, invisible feeling that stays locked in your head.
Okay.
This spiritual connection births tangible things into the physical world. It births art, subtle music, and literature.
And the text refers to this as aesthetic science, or Nenden Vijyan. And that phrasing just stopped me in my tracks, calling art a science.
That's a bold claim.
Right, because usually we put science and art in completely different buckets. Science is math and test tubes. Art is paint and emotion.
But this challenges that divide completely. Why is it a science? Because it follows a repeatable mechanism. Think about a composer writing a symphony.
Okay.
They are tapping into that universal rhythm, utilizing frequencies, pacing, and harmony to create a piece of music. Yeah. And when 1,000 people sit in a concert hall and hear that music, their neurochemistry and their spirits are elevated simultaneously.
Oh, wow.
The artist used a reliable, structured method to translate the universal rhythm into a human experience. That is a science.
That makes so much sense. It's a mechanism for collective elevation. And the sources say that when this aesthetic science is pushed to its absolute highest limit, it leads to profound mental peace, wisdom, and what they call Mohan Vijjan, or supra-aesthetic science.
Which is characterized by pure devotion, pure love, and deep integrity.
So in the PROUT framework, things like honesty, integrity, and self-sacrifice aren't just nice-to-haves.
No, not at all.
They are the highest form of human capital. They're a resource that must be cultivated and maximally utilized.
Absolutely. Just like physical stamina or intellectual brilliance, spiritual integrity is a measurable asset to society.
Okay, so we have these three incredible dimensions of the individual, the Vyashti, the physical mushroom, the metaphysical biology, the spiritual mycelium. But the text then transitions to the Samashti, the collective. It explicitly states that the welfare of the collective lies in the individual, and the welfare of the individual lies in the collective. And I kind of have to push back a little here.
Go for it. Let's hear it.
Let's go back to my subway car example from earlier. We're all jammed in there. We all live in our own houses. We earn our own paychecks. We think our own separate thoughts. How do my individual psychic waves actually impact the person sitting across from me?
Right, like how are we actually connected?
Yeah. Aren't we just a bunch of isolated units sharing infrastructure?
It's a completely fair question, and it's basically the default assumption of modern life. But this brings us to a brilliant quote from T.R. Sarkar, the founder of PROUT. He directly addresses this illusion of isolation.
What does he say?
He writes, "A mere aggregate of numerous individuals whose psychic waves move in different directions cannot be called a society."
Psychic waves moving in different directions. Okay, wait. Does that mean if we disagree on things, we aren't a society? Because if a society requires 100% agreement on everything, that sounds more like a cult than a civilization.
Right. That's a crucial distinction to make. It is not about everyone having the exact same thoughts or agreeing on every policy. It's about a shared baseline.
Okay.
For a true society to exist, there must be a happy blending. There has to be a shared sense of social consciousness and mutual service. If you're on that subway car and someone collapses and everyone just steps over them to get to work because their individual goals are more important than human life, you do not have a society.
You have a highly functioning group of sociopaths.
Exactly. P.R. Sarkar argues that without spirituality and without the morality that inherently comes from that spiritual connection, the very spine of society breaks.
Spine breaks. The underlying mycelial network is dead, so the whole forest eventually rots.
Yes.
And what's fascinating is how the text applies those same three dimensions to the society as a massive single organism. Like, a society has physical potential in its shared resources and infrastructure. It has metaphysical potential in its collective intellectual pursuits. But do you know how the text says we can actually measure a nation's collective spiritual potential?
It is one of the most profound insights in the material.
A nation's cultural heritage. The cultural heritage of a society is the actual tangible representation of its collective spiritual potential.
Think about it. The accumulated art, the shared values, the oral traditions, the literature, the aesthetic science of generations layered together. That is the reservoir of a society's collective spirit.
Which leads us perfectly into the mechanics of how this society actually thinks. If a society has a spirit and an intellect, where is that stored? The sources argue that human evolution isn't just biological. It is fundamentally tied to the development of collective psychology.
Right.
The synthesis of many unit minds into one massive shared consciousness.
And this collective mind has a distinct anatomy, just like your individual mind does. The text breaks it down into three specific layers of collective memory.
Okay, let's go through them. First, we have the collective unconscious. The sources describe this as race memory carried over from prehistoric times.
These are the deep primal drives shared by all of humanity. The instinct for survival, the fight-or-flight response, the fundamental fears and desires that we don't even have to think about.
But sitting right above that is the collective subconscious. And I am obsessed with this framing.
It's so good.
The text describes the collective subconscious as the repository of historical events that a society prefers to forget.
It's a brilliant psychological diagnosis of human history.
It really is, because it perfectly mirrors human therapy. Like, a single person might repress a bad childhood memory because it's too painful to deal with. But Prout says this happens on a massive civilizational scale. A nation will literally bury its collective traumas, its historical atrocities, the wars it started and lost. Why? Because those events contradict the heroic, perfect narrative the society wants to believe about itself. So they get pushed into the subconscious, like conveniently leaving certain events out of high school history books.
But just like in individual psychology, burying a trauma doesn't make it disappear.
Right.
Those repressed memories still shape the nation's behavior. They cause societal neuroses, unexplainable fears, and systemic prejudices. You can't heal the collective mind until you bring that subconscious material up to the surface.
Which brings us to the third layer, the collective conscious mind. This is built on present, immediate human events. This is the layer where our current societal ideologies live.
Right, the active operating system we're running today, whether that's capitalism, communism, or progressive socialism, it lives in the conscious layer of the collective mind.
And to keep that operating system healthy and progressing, the text outlines what it calls the 6 spokes of social progress, like spokes on a wheel moving humanity forward. Now, I'm not going to just read all 6 like a textbook, but let's look at how a few of them interact. For instance, 2 of the spokes are a spiritual ideology and a socioeconomic political philosophy. Why do we need both?
Well, because Without a socioeconomic philosophy, a spiritual ideology is just thoughts and prayers.
Right.
It has no physical mechanism to feed people or build infrastructure. It's a mycelial network with no mushrooms.
Yeah. But on the flip side, without a spiritual ideology, a socioeconomic philosophy becomes ruthless. It becomes purely materialistic, where people are just cogs in a machine.
Exactly. The other spokes include spiritual practice, or sadhana, a unified social outlook, scriptures, or shastra, representing shared wisdom texts, and finally, a preceptor or guru, a guiding leadership figure who embodies all these principles.
And if any of those are missing?
If any of these spokes are missing or broken, the wheel of collective psychology warps and societal evolution stalls.
But when those spokes are working together, the wheel turns. And the sources provide this incredible data-driven timeline of how our shared societal evolution has advanced over history. It's like watching a time lapse of human consciousness expanding. They measure this using a few different metrics. The first one is the radius of the collective mind.
This is essentially asking, how wide is our circle of identity and empathy? Who do we consider us?
1 million years ago, the radius of the collective mind was just the tribe. That was the edge of your world. Anyone outside the tribe was an alien or a threat.
Then, around 100,000 years ago, the radius expanded to classes. People recognized shared skills or societal roles. 10,000 years ago, it grew to cities.
And we know why that happened mechanically, right? The invention of agriculture forced people to stay in one place. You suddenly had to cooperate with thousands of people you weren't related to just to keep the grain silos full and water running. Empathy and cooperation had to expand out of pure necessity.
Necessity drove the expansion. And then, 1,000 years ago, up to the present, trade and communication expanded that radius again, up to nations and kingdoms.
It's a deeply optimistic view of history. Despite all the wars and setbacks, human history is essentially the story of our empathy circle getting wider and wider.
The second metric they track is our worldview. 1 million years ago, humanity had an archaic worldview. We didn't understand why the sun rose or the wind blew. That shifted to a magical worldview, then into a mythological era 10,000 years ago. And at present, we are firmly in the scientific worldview.
But what is crucial here, and this is a major cornerstone of this entire theory, is that PROUT isn't advocating for a cold, hyper-materialistic science that strips away our humanity. The sources are pointing toward an intersection. It's the dawn of what they call scientific spirituality.
Right. It's applying the rigorous observational tools of the scientific era to understand and maximize our spiritual and aesthetic potential. It's not a rejection of spirituality. It's an evolution of it.
In fact, the sources heavily emphasize neo-humanism here, which is essentially a new ethics for future humanity. It's the idea that our empathy shouldn't just stop at other humans, but should extend to animals, plants, and the entire inanimate world.
Neo-humanism provides the moral framework for that scientific spirituality. It ensures that as our technology becomes incredibly powerful, our wisdom and empathy scale up to match it.
The timeline tracks two more fascinating metrics. Our moral outlook started 1 million years ago as just the pleasure principle, animal instinct. If it feels good, do it. 1,000 years ago, it evolved into law and order. And today, the collective mind is intensely focused on individual rights.
And finally, the text tracks gender dynamics, which reveals a complex trajectory. It starts 1 million years ago with matriarchy, which the text notes held a vision of equal importance.
Then it moves to a phase of subordinated cooperation, and around 10,000 years ago into patriarchal society.
But the focus is on where we are heading. The text points to a transition toward coordinating cooperation between male and female.
And the mechanism there is key. Coordinating cooperation versus subordinating. It's not about one dominating the other or one just assisting the leader. It's a true, balanced partnership. When you zoom out and look at all these metrics, the radius of the mind, the worldview, the moral outlook, the gender dynamics, you see an undeniable trajectory. Collective consciousness is the actual engine driving long-term historical advancement.
It proves that the collective psychic waves of humanity are slowly, steadily aligning. We are moving toward greater integration and deeper understanding.
So how do we apply this third principle to our daily lives? If I'm listening to this right now, driving to work or folding laundry, what is my takeaway? How do I use this?
The takeaway is that your daily personal tasks are not isolated. When you take care of your physical health, you aren't just improving your own life. You are literally contributing to the physical potential of the collective. When you educate yourself, you enrich the collective metaphysical mind. And when you practice integrity or create something beautiful, You are feeding that underground mycelial network. You are building the cultural heritage of human society.
You're a crucial node in a planetary network. Every action either feeds the forest or starves it. Now, if you're fascinated by this framework and want to dive deeper into neo-humanism and PROUT, the source material for today actually comes from Ananda Marga publications.
Yeah, they have amazing resources.
There are also vibrant communities actively discussing these concepts online. You can look up the Sidvipras movement or the Next Human Project on YouTube to really firm up your understanding of scientific spirituality.
Definitely check those out.
Yeah, they're doing incredible work exploring these new ethics for the future. And for the authenticity of original knowledge regarding this, do visit Ananda Marga publication, or you can even email them at ampsbooks@gmail.com.
Because the true value of this knowledge isn't just in understanding it, it's in applying it. We have to actively participate in this evolution to make this world a better place for all to live with happiness and justice.
We have to turn that crowded, silent subway car into a symphony. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into PROUT's third fundamental principle. But before we go, we want to leave you with something to chew on.
We tracked the evolutionary timeline today. We saw how the radius of the collective mind expanded out of necessity, from the tribe to the class to the city to the modern nation-state. This raises a massive question about our immediate future.
Okay, what is it?
What happens to our collective psychology when that radius finally expands to encompass the entire globe? What does a planetary conscious mind actually look like?
And more importantly, when that global network finally comes online, what is your individual role in building it? Keep thinking, keep growing, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.